Hey everybody, Joseph Rothschild here, aka back with another Twitter thread. Today we're talking about cards that ruin fan favorite formats. Ugh, that's a tongue twister. Thanks for editing out the previous takes, Dyer. Today we're talking about some cards that ruin fan formats. Anyway, today we're talking about cards that ruin. So if you're unfamiliar, there is, unsurprisingly, over Yu-Gi-Oh's quarter of a century history, there are a ton of individual formats that are beloved by the fan base, but frequently these formats include a number of cards that reduce the amount of skill found in those formats. It's why duelists like Patrick Hoban were so successful in asking individuals to board out Vanity's emptiness. No one wants to play with a card that is so far above the power level of everything else that it warps the entire format around it. Today we're going to talk about some formats that are extremely cool, except for one really frustrating card. I've begun with Dragon Ruler format. I love the Dragon Ruler mirror upon first release, 3 of each name. I think it's incredibly skillful, incredibly explosive, and dominated by this ridiculous card, Super Rejuvenation. During the end phase of the turn this card was activated, draw a number of cards equal to the number of dragon monsters you discarded or tributed from your hand or field this turn. Usually you'd be drawing 4, which can draw you into additional copies of Super Rejuvenation, which can draw you into additional copies of Super Rejuvenation, which can draw you pretty much your entire deck. Branded Sword Soul format in early 2022 is awesome. A lot of games would be very resource intensive due to strong cards like Mirror Jade and Shang Ying on each side, except getting this flipped on you all day playing either is not fun. Yeah, that format was dominated not by 2 top decks that were incredibly flexible because they were flexible, but by those decks being the most available at flipping exactly this card in games 2 and 3. I've recently taken a liking to Hat format thanks to a friend from my local scene, but they are exactly 2 cards that if given a strongly worded email stating to leave the format, it would easily become my favorite alt format. Distant Coder says Maxi was actually fine in Hat because it genuinely did just keep combo decks in check. Could not disagree with this more. The power of the combo decks in that format is so immensely higher than decks like Hat. Maxi is not sufficient at stopping them, it just makes games extremely swingy. Historically, people were like, oh, I have to respect Maxi too much to play a combo deck. But with the added benefit of, you know, the disrespect we feel in the modern era, people have figured out, like, you should probably be playing Infernity. I don't think anyone would disagree with Vanities. Fuck this card. Dyer says, NR is a great format. One of the few alt formats that I actively participate in. I can't think of a single flaw in this format. Except him. He can rot on our community ban list for his sins. Megalith Bathor. What has Bathor ever done to you? Popped 5, probably. Ugh. Dozens of formats. A Dueling Sensor. I hate whenever this card pops up in Duel Links. It's not even a good card, but it's just such a blowout 3 times out of 10, and it's not played often enough to play around. Drowning hits the sweet spot of card that is like really game determinative and card that fucking sucks, so you shouldn't play around it. Oh no! This asshole ruined like 50% of the last 2 years of Yu-Gi-Oh! Single-handedly. Another Hat answer, I wish I was dead, says, this asshole. Artifacts are pretty dang good already. Being able to reuse Call of the Haunted and Fiendish Chain and have one of the best removal effects basically spells the end of the game when it gets summoned. Pleiadis is far and away the best Xyz monster in Hat format. In fact, there are decks that are playable in Hat that are all just, they all exist to make this card. Dane will be remembered for adding the final pieces to complete Toss format. It also introduced one of Yu-Gi-Oh's biggest albatrosses. Mine was around and had to be accounted for when deck building. Thankfully, IO and back row removal were in many side decks, but yeesh. This card was legal for way longer than I remember it being, and every format it's in immediately tanks when someone draws an absolutely correct Saz. In fact, Soul Charge being at 3 is more fun in my opinion than Soul Charge being at 1. While it's at 3, it enables a series of really bad combo decks that like play terrible cards from the Zexal era because like you can overlay 3 shark stickers for like the 3-mat rank 3. But if it's at 1, like it's just this huge blowout that you occasionally win the game because you opened. Anyway, fun fact, did you know this card was banned in 2017? Much later than that, huh? It was banned in 2019? I literally blocked it out. I gotta go to therapy. Holy shit. Love Hat format, but of course there was one pair of cards that made me groan every single time I saw them flip face up. This is such a weird take, because Fire Hand and Ice Hand, in my opinion, are Hat. Like when I think of Hat, the first thing I think of are the hands. However, I can't disagree. I feel like the hands are some of the most frustrating cards ever written, and they work in these stupid, unintuitive ways where you can like force them to miss timing. I do dislike these cards, but I can't deny that they are integral to that format's playability. How the fuck do people play Go when half the format is this? It's so funny. Like, I hear a lot of people be like, yeah, well, the fact that the Trinity's in every deck means that you have to account for it, but I never hear anyone say that it's good that it's in the format. Edison's so cool. Get it out of here. I'm sorry to tell you this, Scarlon. This is maybe my most cancelable take. And I've had many. Oppression is fine. Royal Oppression is crazy in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Because you can build a big-ass fuck-off negate board and then flip up Royal Oppression. But in Edison, you never have full control of the board.
The fact that it's reciprocal really matters. There's a lot that Royal Oppression doesn't deal with. It doesn't deal with special summons and damage decks. There's some decks against which it just does nothing, so you can't manage. Destroy the output. Every deck is playing it out.
Pendulum Magician is my favorite deck, and I loved Pendulum Magician format, but Wavering Eyes is such a frustrating card to play around. Wavering Eyes having the 3 and 4 effect is one of the most frustrating things in Yu-Gi-Oh! It just like ensures that if Pendulum is a playable deck or archetype, you are going to have the worst feels bad in the world when you Wavering Eyes and your opponent Wavering Eyes and you Wavering Eyes in response. Ravine Ruler was a super cool and diverse format with a lot of different options for decks. And then someone at Konami thought it would be a good idea to print this card and have it legal for 2 months. Sixth Sense was one of the worst cards to play against. It was just this big RNG high roll sack fest. I hated it. Duelist Alliance format is an easy choice for a fan favorite, but this one card was such a blight even for one ban list. This one was doubly frustrating because no one understood why they took it off. Like, it was so game determinative, so powerful, and it didn't need to come on. Like, we knew it was broken even then. Oh, wow. Why isn't everyone playing Tengu Plan format? It's quite varied, and unlike Edison, there aren't terrible blowouts like Royal Oppression and Cold. Tengu Plan is maybe one of the most interesting formats of all time because it was remembered extremely fondly by the player base, and then when Alex and I got there in history, a bunch of people picked it up and realized the format actually fucking sucks balls. It is not remotely fun or interesting, and a lot of that comes from the existence of Blackluster Soldier Envoy at the beginning. I don't know why they unbanned this card. I actually like September 12 format. Dino Rabbit, Chaos Dragon, Windup, Hero, Agent, 6 Sam. So much shit was playable then, even Worms. But this card should 100% be gentleman agreement out of the format. It's so frustrating because Windup, in my opinion, is such an interesting combo deck, and it has so many cool things after the Hunter ban, except one of the cool things it does is make this, which is not cool. I don't think I can do a Rush one, but I'll try. These two, Rush's meta was generally always fun, but for over a year, these were the best things you can be playing. Thunderbolt had an infinite loop, and Secret Order made many decks just play level 7 normal beats. They've since been both limited and power crept, but fuck them. Reaper format was fun for about 2 weeks before everyone realized this was the best card in the format and Solemn Judgment was the second best card in the format. Very true. Every format this card was legal would have been twice as good if it was banned. But especially in 2022, when it facilitated like 5 different DPE Scythe builds in a field otherwise populated by Branded and Sword Soul. Legitimately 100% correct. That format, every deck that wasn't Branded Sword Soul was like, oh, but what if I go like Dagda and then I make Verte Anaconda? Absolutely correct. The Sword Soul deck was super interesting. You know, nothing it did felt too oppressive. Had game going first and second. Oh yeah, except a Protoss was legal and just wins the game on his own. You think this shit is oppressive in best of 1 on Master Duel? Imagine in games 2 and 3 when your opponent knows exactly what the fuck you are up to. I was really struck by how frequent the same cards came up. Like, Yu-Gi-Oh! Players cannot agree on anything, but somehow, universally, we agreed a number of formats would be better without exactly Vanity's emptiness. Congratulations! This is the first and last time we've been here. Roll credits. This fucker and... Shut up! Shut up!